everyone. This is why we come to computer conferences, so we can discover how unreliable computers are. So I'm going to talk to you today about Marimo, which is a new kind of notebook. And just for a bit of background, for those of you who don't know me, so I teach Python and Pandas. That's my full-time job. I've been in business since 1995, and I've been using Python since before then. Yes, that means I'm old. And so most of my work is done via my Lerner Python site and platform. Some of you might have seen my booth in the back. I have courses, I have exercises, I have office hours, I do Discord, I have projects. I have a newsletter called Better Developers. About 30,000 people get it each week with tips and tricks on Python usage. If you're into data, and there's a good chance you are, if you're here at PyData, then I have a weekly newsletter called Bamboo Weekly. And yes, that is a picture of a panda wearing a Python t-shirt using a Jupyter notebook. And yes, basically every week I ask questions having to do with current events and public data sets, puzzles on Wednesday, solutions on Thursday. And in a little bit after this talk, I'm going to be doing a book drawing for both of my books. You can get a free copy of either Pandas workout or Python workout. I have the printed copies here. Printed copies, they're not just for museums anymore. I also have ebook copies, although those will not be signed unless you want to ruin your phone's screen. So basically, let's face it, I love Jupyter. I've been using Jupyter for a very, very long time. I've been using it so long that I remember when it was not called Jupyter. I remember when it was called the IPython notebook. And in fact, if you didn't know this, that ending there, the suffix IPYNB, stands for IPython notebook. That's why it's not Jup or something like that. And Jupyter is really great, right? It's a web-based REPL. It's a read, eval, print loop. I call it my Python laboratory, and it has nothing to do with Jupyter Lab. This is where I do lots of experimentation. I try things out. I see what works and what doesn't work. It gives us living documents that we can share with other people. It integrates our documentation, our code, our data, our visualization. We can have it all right there. My graduate advisor used to complain that papers in academic journals would give you the analysis, but you had to go elsewhere for the data. And that elsewhere was often asking the other researcher for the data, and maybe they would respond and maybe they weren't. And now Jupyter is so popular that you don't expect to have to ask that. You could just go get a Jupyter notebook from somewhere and it'll have it all integrated there. It's easy to share because it's a document. There are third-party extensions. There's a visual debugger. There are even widgets. You can do like data dashboards with it. Everyone loves Jupyter. Well, most everyone. We'll get to that in a moment. There are millions of notebooks on GitHub. I used to say to people that there are more than 1 million publicly available Jupyter notebooks on GitHub. It turns out I was wrong. There are more than 10 million Jupyter notebooks publicly available on GitHub, and I know this for a fact because I counted them myself. PyCharm, VS Code, they support Jupyter, right? Azure, AWS, Snowflake, everyone's supporting Jupyter-like environments. And it even supports lots of non-Python languages for those who would be so foolish as to use them. It's gotten lots and lots of awards. So that's great, right? Well, not everyone loves Jupyter, right? So there's a famous presentation at JupyterCon 2018, and I give him a lot of credit for being willing to say this at JupyterCon. His talk was called I Don't Like Notebooks. And he made it out of there alive somehow. And he was basically talking about the problems that you've probably experienced with notebooks. And you're like, whatever. The big one is reproducibility, right? If you have a notebook and you set variables in it, you're not sure if those variables are still set when you work with later cells. Because did you actually execute it in that order that you see it visually? Maybe, maybe not. Version control, if you put a notebook into Git, it works great. You put multiple versions into Git, it works great. You do a diff, not so great, right? Because the file format is a JSON string and all sorts of other stuff, and humans cannot view that in diffs. It's hard to reuse code in a notebook. If I write a function in my notebook, then how am I supposed to use it afterwards? And indeed, I was at a talk here 2 or 3 years ago, the first PyData to Aviv, where someone gave this great talk where they said, how do you do it? You take all of your function definitions and put them in a module, and then you just import them into your notebook, which is a great solution, but it's kind of sad that you have to do that. How do you test a notebook? And IDEs are giving you better coloring and documentation and general feedback and so forth. And so what I want to do is show you Marimo, which is a new next generation open source notebook. It was written from the ground up to avoid these issues. And they were, until literally a few days ago, a startup. They were just acquired by, I don't even remember their name, but it's something to do with cloud computing, so that narrows it down to 1 million companies. But basically, they were just acquired, and they say this will give them the resources to expand more and to make it more freely available and do more development, and it will stay 100% open source. So the worry that many people have of using something that's developed by a commercial company and is in the open source world, for now at least we don't need to worry about it, and I've been jumping into it a lot. Now, the thing is, change is really hard. I've been using Jupyter, as I said, for a very long time. I've been using it just about every day when I teach, right? So that's like between 4 and 8 hours a day for the last many, many years. And so to tell me I should use something else, it's got to be really compelling. And I have not changed for everything yet, but I've changed for many things. For Bamboo Weekly now, I provide notebooks in Marimo format instead of Jupyter format because I think it's sort of easier to work with. And what I want to do is show you what Marimo is and how it works and how it solves many of these problems and how we can play with it as well. And even if Marimo isn't quite there yet, well, it's the more compelling option, it's very much worth looking at. So first of all, how do you install it? Well, duh, you install it with pip. Pip install Marimo recommended. Or if you're a cool kid, then you say UV add Marimo recommended, and it's put into your pyproject.toml. Either way, you install it and it's available just like any other Python package. By the way, if you are using UV, and I should add, I have, as of 2 days ago, a free online course called, it's at uvcrashcourse.com, and it will teach you all you need to know about using UV. One of the things in UV that you might learn about is UV tool, where it adds an alias to your shell to run things that you don't want to have associated with any particular project. Marimo does not work well with UV tools, so don't do that. So you can use Marimo edit to edit a notebook or to create it, and if it exists, it's open and run. If it doesn't exist, it's created, and you can run Marimo edit and name the file later. But you know what? It's really boring for me to tell you about software. It's much more exciting to use it, and dangerous. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to shrink this down a bit, and I'm going to say here, UV run Marimo edit, and let's call this PyData Tel Aviv.py. And what's this going to do? It's going to run things, open up my browser, and here we go. Now I have a Marimo notebook. Let's make this a little bigger. And it looks kind of sort of like Jupyter because what do you know? It's a notebook. So I can say things like x equals 10 and y equals 20. And I can say now x plus y. And you'll be shocked, but shocked to discover that it's 30. Who would have guessed? This is advanced technology, folks. I see why they were acquired, right? And then I can say like x times y, and I get 200. Again, pretty amazing. Now, what is the big problem that happens to us in Jupyter? Once again, we go back and we change this. So I go back to the first cell, and I say, actually, I want this to be 333. And I execute that cell, and then the second cell doesn't change. Well, watch this. It changes. When you change one variable, it percolates through. Now, you might have seen this somewhere in another technology known as a spreadsheet, right? This is not new technology, folks, but the fact that it's now available in our notebooks is pretty great. And I can go back and, I can do this all day, right? I can change this, and it'll update all the cells. It percolates through. Well, wait a second. What then happens if I say x equals 4? And the answer is it won't let me. One of the big things in Marimo is every variable is set once and once only. And if you try to set a variable more than once, it will give you an error. Now, the good thing is it'll tell you, hey, wait, x was also defined in, and it'll tell you which cell. You can even click in this hyperlink, and it'll bring you up there, and then you can go and change it, right? Or you can get rid of it, or whatever you want to do. But it will not let you define a variable in more than one cell. And when you update a variable, when you assign to it, then that percolates through everything that is dependent on it. And how does it know? Because here on the left, we have a whole bunch of different things. And if I look at, let's see if I can remember, explore variables, it will show me here on the left all the variables I've defined and their types and their values, where they were defined and where they are used. And through this tree structure, it can figure out, have you defined it before and what needs to be updated? Only the things that need to be updated are actually updated. So this is pretty darn neat. But that's kind of just the beginning. So I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to say here, file name equals taxi.csv, I'm going to say here import pandas as PD. And I'm going to say here df equals PD read CSV of file name. And what do you know? This loads up in pandas, this file name. This is one of my favorite data sets. I've been playing with it for years. This is a bunch of taxi data from New York City from about 10 years ago, right? And so if I now say, show me df, those of you who have used Jupyter before know what's going to happen, mostly. Yeah, it's going to show me my data frame, but look what it shows me. It gives me the name of the column. It gives me the type of the column. It gives me a little histogram showing me the spread of the column. It puts it through, it like shows me how many rows, how many columns, how many do I want to see per page. So I can say, oh, I want to see 25 per page, right? And I can go through the pages here. It's not going to show me just the first rows and just the last rows, which is pretty great. But wait, there's more. I can even click here on this header and I can sort it ascending or descending by any of these things. I can copy the column name, which I actually do quite a bit. I can do what you do in Excel, which is freezing left and right, so that I can scroll through the rest of the columns and see things in different places. I can format different ways. I can filter. So I can say, I only want to see filtering of the trip distance, where it is, between, greater, whatever. I can play with that in all sorts of different ways. Now, is this replacing my queries? It is not. Is it replacing my queries when I'm just trying to explore my data? Oh yeah, it is. It's pretty great in doing that as well. And so also, by the way, the fact that I can see what the D type is of each column and that it shows me the uniques here allows me to say, oh wait, pick up and drop off date time, those should really be date time values. They should not be object values. I guess I didn't parse it correctly. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to say here parse dates equals, and I'll say here tpep pick up date time and tpep drop off date time. And so I'll reload it and it will automatically percolate through because that's what Marimo does. And then this cell will be showing the right thing and it'll show me date times and it'll show me the minimum and maximum. So it's from June 1st, 2015 to June 6th, 2015, because of course it's a date time and we can run min and max on it. So that's pretty sweet as well. And so I can play with my data in all sorts of ways here that otherwise, again, would not be impossible. It would be kind of annoying. Well, I showed you a little bit on the left here that we have some things we can play with, and I'm not going to go through all of it, but we can look at the files in the current directory. We're going to look at that in a moment. I can look at the variables, as I said, explore data sources. So here it shows me df, and I can drop into this and take a look at it and explore it. If I have packages that I've installed here, for example, let's say for whatever reason I want to do import, I'll say import requests. And what does Marimo say? Oh, actually, it's doing it just fine. I guess it's there already. Let's try something else. Import, I don't know, rich. There we go. And it says, hey, I didn't find rich. Would you like me to install it? Would you like me to install it with UV? Sure, I'll do that. And bam, it's in my Pi project. Now it's available, and now I can use it. It's really trying to sort of keep track of the stupid things I'm going to do and avoid it as much as possible. I have a little scratch pad here, so if I want to write code that's not going to affect the notebook, I can do that as well. So this is all pretty sweet and pretty great, but it gets even better. So for example, what if I say here, def hello name, right, return hello name. Right, that's a pretty reasonable function. How can someone use that from outside of my notebook? By the way, if you're using this function from my notebook, I hope you have a secondary career lined up. But basically, the fact is that if I go back to the files here and I look at, here we go, PyData Tel Aviv.py, I look at this file, oops, let's just open this here, open file, and look, it is a Python file, and every cell is in a decorator app.cell, which means that I can go and load it. And if I go down here, we'll see app.function. In other words, if I want to, I can import this file in another Python file, and it'll work just fine because the function is available. Now, you can only put one function in a cell at a time in order for this to work, but that's still pretty great. It means we have reusable software that we can play with. Okay, well, let's go further. What if I do this? What if I say here, import from Plotly import express as px. And now I'm going to say here, let's do this. I'm going to say here df, dot walk, and the df, let's say here, df, passenger, let's do this, sure. Passenger count, oh, we don't do that. Let's just do here, dot type
We'll say px, fine, we'll say px dot, we'll scatter plot. Sure, scatter. And we'll say x equals, and we'll say trip distance. And we'll say y equals total amount. So here's a question for you. Do you think that the farther you go in a taxi, the more you have to pay? And you'll be shocked to discover the answer is yes. The farther you go, the more you have to pay. But it's not a line. It's pretty good. And see here I'm using Plotly to show it. So as with all notebooks, it's showing it to me, and I can play with it in this way. And of course, it's Plotly, so if I hover over it, I can get the tooltips and find out exactly what trip I'm working on. Okay, that's nice. But we can do better than this, because maybe I want to show the colors. So I can say here, color equals, and let's say here, payment type. And now it's going to show me the colors of the payment type. Okay, that's great. But maybe I'm not interested in all the trips. Maybe I'm interested in all the trips that are less than a certain distance. Okay, so I'm going to say here, lock, lambda df, and we'll say here trip distance less than, and let's choose something, 100. Well, that's kind of stupid, right? I don't want to have this hard-coded there. I want to have something that I can mess with. So I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to say import Marimo as MO. Why they chose MO, I don't know. Fine. And then I'm going to say here, I'm going to say, let's say max distance equals MO UI slider from 0 to 1,000. And then I'll say here, max distance. Look what happens. I get a little slider, and I can move it around. Woohoo! Well, guess what? I can then go in here, and I can say not less than 100. I can say max distance dot value. And you know what's going to happen now. Now, as I move this slider around, it's going to adjust my graph. Well, that's kind of a little silly, I guess. Maybe I should make it like not to 1,000. Maybe I should make it like 200. Right? And so now I can change this dynamically. And it's going to update as I move the slider. In other words, I'm able to create a data dashboard in my notebook. And you might say, well, wait a second. Maybe I don't want to show this code to people. Okay, so we go up here and we do hide code. And in fact, there's a run version of Marimo that we can use, which does not show the code, which only shows the output and which only shows the widgets. So you can indeed create data dashboards in this way, which is pretty sweet and cool. And we can use all sorts of things here, right? If I want to, let's just see if I can do this really quickly. Let's do here, color source equals, and we'll say here MIUI dot radio. And we'll say here, hold on just a second, let me just look at my notes to remember exactly what that is. Oh yeah, that's right. So I have to say here options equals, and we'll say here, let's say passenger count, and we'll say here payment type. Right, we'll just do that, and then we'll say here, value equals passenger count. All right, and we'll say label equals color source. And I say here color source. Great. So now I have checkboxes. And now I can go down here to my code. Oh, I have to show the code again. Show the code. I say now color equals, and we once again are going to use an F string, and we're going to say here, and it's going to be color source dot value. Voila. And now if I choose what I want the color source to be, it will switch accordingly. Now, let's say I want to share this with other people. First of all, there are a whole bunch of ways that I can share it. One of them is I can go here and I can share it. And I can publish the HTML to the web. I can create a WebAssembly link. It will create a WASM application that I can use there. But I can do something else too. I can say here, go to Molab. If you've ever heard of Google Colab, Marimo has Molab. I know. And if I now say import notebook, well, actually, let me do something a little different here. Let me just go up here. Let's get my file. And instead of my file being taxi CSV, I'm going to load it from the internet. So we'll say here files Lerner, COIL. So then it's going to load it from the internet from my server because I was sneaky and actually prepared. And now I can upload it from, and we'll say here there's going to be desktop, and we'll say PyData, and we'll say here there's going to be PyData Tel Aviv. So up it goes. And now anyone who wants to can see it and link to it. I'll make it not secret anymore. Here we go, initializing and so forth. And they will get it in their own VM, in their own sandbox. It will come up and run, and pretty sweet. And you can make it private or you can make it public if you want to. And so I've been distributing notebooks this way for a while now for Bamboo Weekly, and it works really, really great. However, you need to make sure the data is elsewhere so that they can load it from online. Here we go. And now it's loading and it's running. It, by the way, runs everything when it starts up, or it should run everything when it starts up. Does not seem to be doing that, but fine. We'll tell it to do that. Okay. And I will not make this sacred. I will make this public, whatever. Add to gallery. Sure. So basically, one other last thing I want to show you. So one of the nice things about Jupyter is that we can include markdown, right? So I can say this is a headline. Notice that it updates, and this is point 1, and this is point 2, and this is point 3. Great. Marimo people tell us we should not do this so much. I don't listen to them all the time. But what I can do is say instead mo.md. In other words, I'm starting up a function called Marimo, and I'll say this is a great string, and by the way, x equals x. If I make this into an f string, that's right, it will get the value from before. And if I go up here and I change x to be 456 and I execute that, that's right, it sees that and changes it to 456 right there, which is pretty darn sweet. So Marimo is pretty great. Where does it have problems, and why am I not using it yet in all of my teaching? So first of all, they're moving really, really fast. Last week I reported 2 bugs. Within 48 hours they had fixed both of them, which is great. But if you're a company, you don't want to be updating your software every other day. That can lead to angry meetings, also angry users. It does sometimes die with weird data. It does not have magic commands, which I love in Jupyter. It doesn't have shell commands, which I love almost as much. When you delete cells, you get into some weird states. The keyboard shortcuts, I really love the Jupyter keyboard shortcuts, and the display is a little different. And the big problem for me is what I mentioned before, the reassigning of variables. It's terrible. It's a terrible habit. But I 10 times a day, 100 times a day say df equals, my list equals, x equals. And you know what? It's a hard habit to break. I will break it one of these days, but for now it's hard for me to do that. I will switch at some point. But really overall, I think that Marimo has demonstrated a lot of creativity and cleverness in the notebook space. They bring a lot to the table. I think it's certainly worth using if you're doing a lot of work in production with data that must be accurate. It can be shareable, it's runnable as an app, still very young, but showing a lot of promise. And I hope you'll give it a shot. Thanks very much. If you have any questions, I think there's a little time. And don't forget my book drawing in a little bit.